She said it under the kitchen's white light, like it was a scheduling issue, not a marriage. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. She just said I needed to stop begging for intimacy. Then she turned back to her phone. I nodded. That was the part that surprised her later. The house was quiet in that way that only happens when two people are awake but done with each other. Outside, the city was still moving, and I was already dressed for a night shift I didn't technically need to take. I worked nights anyway. I always had. When the city slept, I made sure things didn't break. Water lines, power grids, traffic systems. I knew what it meant to keep something running without being seen. She stayed at the counter, scrolling, thumbs fast, expression focused in a way she hadn't been with me in months. She said something about a late meeting tomorrow, another project closing late, another ride home she wouldn't need to explain. I didn't ask who with. I didn't ask anything. I picked up my badge and keys. She noticed that. She asked if I was leaving already. I said nothing that sounded like an argument, just that I had an extra shift. She exhaled like I'd finally done something right. At the door, I paused, not to look back, but because she added one more thing, almost casually. She said pressure kills desire. She said I should learn that. I stepped into the hallway and closed the door softly. That was the last time I tried to convince her of anything. The first name that kept showing up was Daniel Mercer. I heard it before I saw it. She started saying it at dinner like it was part of the weather. Daniel thinks the client will push back. Daniel says we need to tighten the proposal. Daniel offered to drive her after a late review because parking downtown is impossible at night. She said it casually, like she was doing me a favor by keeping me informed. I met him once at a company mixer. Senior project manager. Married. Confident in a way that did not ask permission from the room. He shook my hand and held eye contact a second too long, like he already knew something I did not. After that night, her phone never left her hand. It used to stay face up on the counter. Now it stayed angled away, screen dimmed, notifications muted. She started taking calls on the balcony, saying it was about budgets and deadlines. One evening, I came home early from a shift swap. The apartment was dark except for the glow from the living room. She was laughing, low and easy, the kind of laugh I had not heard in months. When she noticed me, she ended the call mid-sentence and said it was just Daniel, stressed about a contractor. She added that I should not read into everything. She said insecurity was not attractive. I did not argue. I did not accuse. That was the night I understood something had been moving for a long time, and I was the only one standing still. I did not go looking for proof. It came to me because she stopped being careful. One afternoon, when she was in the shower before another late meeting, her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. She used to guard it. Now she assumed I would not look. The notification banner showed Daniel's name and a hotel logo I recognized from downtown, the one near her office where corporate teams booked conference rooms. The message preview was short. He wrote that he had booked the same room again and that he could not wait to see her without the office walls. I did not react. I did not screenshot. I did not confront. Later that week, I noticed small charges on our shared card. Not enough to trigger a fraud alert. Valet parking near that same hotel. 2 glasses of wine at a lobby bar. Always on evenings she told me she was staying late to close out a project. At home, she kept calling my attempts at closeness pressure. She said intimacy should feel spontaneous, not scheduled between my shifts. She said I needed to stop begging. So I did. I took on extra nights officially. I signed the paperwork myself. I requested access to the small service apartment attached to the operations building, something supervisors used between long rotations. When she told me she would be late again, I simply said I might not be home either. She did not notice my face had changed. She thought she was managing both worlds. She did not see I had already stepped out of one. I did not pack a suitcase. I packed like I was rotating shifts. A few shirts, a razor, my laptop. I left the rest in the closet so nothing looked dramatic. The service apartment at the operations building was meant for emergency coverage, a narrow space with a bed, a desk, and a window facing the maintenance yard. It smelled like detergent and concrete. It was enough. I started sleeping there after my night shifts instead of driving home. During the day, when she would normally text asking what I wanted for dinner or whether I would make it back before she left for another late meeting, I kept my answers short. One evening she sent a message that read, "Are you even coming home?" I saw it. I put the phone down. I answered the next day. Not tonight. She called twice after that. I let it ring. When I finally picked up later, she sounded irritated more than worried. She said this new schedule was excessive. She said marriage required effort from both sides. I told her I was focused on work. The next weekend, she came home to an empty apartment. My side of the bed untouched. My shoes gone. The refrigerator half empty because I stopped restocking it. She texted that the house felt strange. She asked if I was punishing her. I did not respond. The house was still our address, but it was no longer where I lived. That was the first time she felt something slip out of her control. Daniel liked to feel untouchable. Men like that always do. From the operations center, I had long stretches of quiet between alerts. Screens in front of me showed traffic flows, water pressure, grid loads. The city trusted me with its infrastructure. I learned a long time ago that patterns tell stories if you watch long enough. Daniel's company was handling a major redevelopment tied to municipal permits. Public filings were easy to access. So were subcontractor complaints buried in industry forums. A delayed inspection here. An unpaid vendor there. Nothing explosive. Just threads. One of the contractors listed in their latest proposal also appeared in a compliance notice for cutting corners on materials. It was small, but in development, small things trigger audits. I sent nothing dramatic. No accusations. No threats. An anonymous tip to the city's compliance office referencing the right document number. A forwarded link to a journalist who covered local construction oversight, framed as a question about transparency in bidding. Then I went back to work. Within weeks, there were internal reviews. Meetings that stretched longer than her late project nights. Daniel's name started appearing in articles, not as a villain, but as a manager overseeing a project under scrutiny. She mentioned the stress at dinner once when I happened to be there to grab mail. She said Daniel was overwhelmed, that the company was being unfairly targeted. I nodded. Structures do not collapse because someone pushes them. They collapse because the foundation was already cracked. I never had to raise my voice. The first crack showed up at her company's quarterly mixer. I was not supposed to be there. She had stopped inviting me months ago, saying the hours did not match and that I looked tired around her colleagues. That evening, I came anyway. Clean shirt, neutral expression. I stayed near the back, by the bar, where conversations float without noticing who is listening. Daniel stood with a small group from senior management. His voice carried less confidence than before. Two executives spoke in low tones about compliance reviews and outside scrutiny. Someone mentioned how quickly journalists had picked up the story. Someone else asked who had authorized certain subcontractors. Claire moved between circles, smiling too brightly. When she saw me, she hesitated for half a second. That was enough. Later, near the dessert table, one of her co-workers, a woman from finance, said out loud that it was surprising no one had noticed the irregularities earlier. She said it while looking directly at Daniel. The room shifted. Claire laughed it off, but no one joined her. I did not approach Daniel. I did not greet him. I did not acknowledge the tension. I finished a drink and left before speeches started. The next morning, Claire texted asking why I had shown up unannounced. She said it felt calculated. I answered hours later. I said I had free time. By then, Daniel's access to certain accounts had been temporarily restricted pending review. She was starting to understand that something was changing. She still thought she could manage it. The messages between them slowed before they stopped. I could see it in the way she carried her phone again. It returned to the counter, face up, like she was daring it to light up. Some evenings it did not. When it did, her expression shifted from anticipation to irritation in seconds. One afternoon, I stopped by the apartment to collect a few more things. She was home, sitting at the table with her laptop open but untouched. She said Daniel was dealing with family priorities. She said the pressure at work was forcing everyone to reassess boundaries. She did not look at me when she said it. Later that week, a mutual acquaintance from her company posted a photo from a corporate retreat. Daniel stood beside his wife, arm firm around her waist, smiling for the camera. The caption mentioned resilience and loyalty during challenging times. Claire stared at that image longer than she meant to. I watched her thumb hover over the screen before she locked it. That evening, she texted me first. She asked if I could come home for dinner, just to talk. She added that things had been complicated and that maybe we both had drifted. I was in the operations room, lights dim, city quiet on the monitors. I responded the next morning. I said I was covering another shift. She called after that. Not irritated this time. Not defensive, just uncertain. For the first time, she was not juggling two worlds. She was standing in one, and it felt empty. She came to the operations building without warning. Security called upstairs to confirm she was there for me. I told them to let her through. When she walked into the lobby, she looked smaller than I remembered, like the space had swallowed some of her certainty. She said we needed to talk somewhere private. I led her to the small break room near the service apartments. Metal table, 2 chairs, fluorescent lights that made everything honest. She started with questions. She asked why I had been distant. She asked if I knew about Daniel's situation at work. She asked if I had been trying to sabotage something. I told her I had been focusing on my job. She said she felt abandoned. She said marriage was not supposed to feel like this. She said I had stopped coming home, stopped trying, stopped asking. I let her finish. Then I told her she had asked me to stop begging for intimacy. I told her I listened. The room went quiet after that. She looked at me like she was seeing a version of me she had not planned for. There was no anger in my voice. No accusation. Just distance. She said Daniel was a mistake. She said it had not meant what I might think. I did not ask for details. When she reached across the table, I did not pull away. I just did not move toward her either. She realized in that moment I was no longer reacting. I was deciding. The audit at her company turned into restructuring. Daniel was not fired in some dramatic scene. He was reassigned, then quietly removed from leadership on the redevelopment project. His name stopped appearing in internal emails. His office door stayed closed more often than open. Claire's role shifted too. She had tied herself too closely to his approvals, his timelines, his promises. When his authority shrank, so did hers. Colleagues who once lingered around her desk began scheduling meetings without her. At home, the apartment felt different even to me when I stopped by to collect the last of my documents. The framed photos on the wall looked staged, like evidence from another life. She stood in the hallway watching me move through rooms that no longer belonged to either of us. She said she had made mistakes. She said she had confused attention with connection. She said she had not realized how much I had been holding together until I stepped back. Her voice broke once, then steadied. She said she did not want to lose her marriage on top of everything else. I listened. I did not offer comfort. I did not offer blame. When she said she was scared of being alone, I told her I had been alone for a long time already. She understood then that her collapse was not something I was going to catch. I had already built a life that did not depend on her noticing me. She came to see me one last time before I changed my mailing address. Not at the apartment. Not at her office. She waited outside the operations building at the end of my shift, coat pulled tight, eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. She said she had ended everything with Daniel. She said he was never going to leave his family, and that she had been naive to believe otherwise. She said she finally understood what she had thrown away when she told me to stop begging. She did not cry loudly. She did not accuse. She just asked if I would come home. The word home hung between us like something fragile. I told her the apartment was still there. The furniture, the photos, the address. But I was not. I said I had learned to live without asking for scraps of attention. I said I had stopped showing up where I was not respected. My voice stayed even. No anger. No triumph. She stepped closer, as if proximity could rewind months. I did not step back. I did not step forward. I told her I wished her clarity. Then I walked past her toward the parking lot, keys in hand, shift already behind me. I did not disappear. I just stopped returning to a place that felt like a favor instead of a choice.